Good morning, everybody. It's Stephen here for the Idiot Quilter. And today on this episode, I thought I'd take you on a tour of my sewing area. I really can't call it a sewing room because it's a very small space. In fact, this is a space that I share with my husband's workshop, although I have been creeping more and more as I add things to this room into his area as well. But I'm going to show you how I organize all of my equipment in a very, very tiny space. I'm talking about 10 feet, if that, by about 10 feet, maybe it's more like 8 feet by 10. It's very, very tiny. So this is not a tour showing you coordinated furniture and equipment. It's not going to show you lovely paintings on a wall, a nice layout for a sewing machine where you can comfortably sew in the magic triangle, you know, between your cutting board and your cutting mat. But I have made it as functional as I possibly can in such a small area, and I'm essentially going to show you how you can store, or at least how I store, things in such a small area. So stay tuned. So let's start with what my sewing room initially looks like when you first walk into it. So this is an area that comes off of my rec room, and as I said, I share this area with my husband. In this part, this is what you often don't see in the background of when I make my videos, or sometimes you do. This is his workshop, and you can see it's pretty loaded with things. So I also share this area with this big thing that's up here against the wall. This is my treadmill. This used to be my exercise room. It still is, actually, but luckily this treadmill folds down when I need to use it, and I can fold it back up. I would like to get it out of this room because it would give me more space. But for now, this is the only place where I can actually put it. So I'm going to just do a little sweep around starting at the door and talk about how I organize my equipment and how everything fits into this room. Remember, this is very, very tiny. So here's the door that leads into this room, and I'm just backing up, and I can't even back up enough that I can get the door in the whole shot. There isn't any space in here I do not utilize. Now you'll see over on this corner there is a filing cabinet, which used to open out towards the door, but we've turned it around the other way so we could get in my Alex unit of drawers, which I'll talk about in a moment. But on that filing cabinet you will see a stand. That stand has stabilizers in it for my embroidery. It used to be used as a wine rack. I put a cardstock bottom, glued it onto the bottom of it, and set it up on its edge like this, and now it has sort of a divided sections for holding many of my stabilizers. It's not big enough to hold them all, and it won't hold really thick rolls, but it serves the purpose right now. And right next to this are tables. I have collapsible tables in a variety of sizes, and these are not all the tables I have. I have a few in our laundry room as well. But these are the tables that I've shown on previous videos that I use for doing my basting and for laying out my quilts for quilting. And this is just their little happy home right here. So the door, as I said, adds some storage space for me using command hooks. So anything that's in a package with holes in it, or some rulers, some heat and bond, that kind of thing, bobbins, I can hang on the back of this door. So that does give me some space. The other advantage of hanging these items on the door is I can see them and I'll remember that I have them. Because, you know, oftentimes you tuck something away in a drawer and you just forget that you had it or which drawer you put it in. As we scan over here a little further, this is my start of my main area, and you can see there's my iron right there. Now, this room did not have a lot of outlets, so I have had to run extension cords from power bars to make outlets. Now, of course, I suppose this is not the right way to do these kind of things, but I do buy the power bars that have fuses in them or circuit breakers in them. So, you know, if I overload it, it'll trip the circuit breaker. So My iron, my steam iron, sits here in the corner, and it's fairly convenient for ironing with that position. But you'll see down on the floor below more stabilizers. Yes, I have a lot of stabilizers. I use hooks on the wall to hang things like packages of zipper by the yard, that kind of thing. My hoops are also on a hook for my embroidery. Some storage packages up there as well that I use for retreats. And then my ruler collection is right here in the corner next to my cutting table. I'm pressing that. And I have two of those little wooden rail things that hold rulers, and that's where they're all stacked. But of course, some of my rulers I can't get in the rack, so they sit here behind this light in this basket for the smaller ones. I have this light. This is a light that I use. It's not turned on right now, but I will turn it on. And this is a great light because it is an OT light, and it's great when you go on a retreat, when we can go back on retreats. But I use it here too, just to shed a little bit more light on my pressing mat. In this little basket, I have my starches and sprays, best press, that kind of stuff. And here is a tray. I initially bought this tray on Amazon a few weeks ago because I thought it would be great. It's meant for utensils, for your flatware. But the way our drawer is set up for our flatware, this did not work. So I thought I'd put it to use here. And this works really well for this. You can see I have little baskets that fit in there quite neatly. They came from the dollar store. And I have my most essential equipment. These are the things I reach for most often. My marking pens, my lint rollers, my scissors, more pencils, pins, wonder clips, lots of wonder clips, scissors, one of my go-to rulers, my rotary cutter, etc. All of that in one neat place. Now what's good about this is if when I set up my tables for quilting, if I need many of the things that happen to be in here, I can either take the individual little baskets out, or I can take the whole tray with me and put it out next to my sewing area that I set up temporarily for quilting. It's not much good to take on a retreat or anything like that, but it's great for organizing right here. And since I do not have a huge cutting area, as you'll see in a moment, this I think makes good use of the space. You will see up here along the edges I have the plastic project boxes, and I have them all labeled. One of my best friends is my labeling machine, and I label everything. So I know what's in these boxes, and a lot of these are kits or they're projects that have been started but not finished yet. It's where I pull out, the fabric I'm going to need, cut it when I get a chance, the pattern may be in the box, and any related threads. And so they all fit right in here very nicely. And these are the containers I use when I go to a sewing class. I will put together a kit for the sewing class in one of these, and it fits into my sewing machine bag. And I'll show you the storage of that in a second. Now up above me we have on hooks again a bunch of bags, cloth bags. Some of them I've made, some of them are ones that I've gotten. I have way too many of those, but that's where they hang, just up there out of the way. And then I have these shelves. Now these shelves, believe it or not, were shelves that were built by Walter's father when he was a kid. And they were for his room, I believe, or something like that. And we've had them hanging on this wall in this room when this was more of a utility room for years. And so I was able to find new homes for the things that were on here already. And I went to the dollar store and I bought all these blue baskets. And these hold the bulk of my fabric. Every now and then I have to straighten them up because they start to overflow a little bit. And these are like fat quarters, or pieces that are basically anywhere from the size of, an eighth of what do they call it, 1/8 fat quarter and up. And I have them labeled. So you see I have specialty fabrics like Christmas fabrics, large pieces. I have them color coordinated. The ones on the lower shelves are the ones I can reach most readily because those are usually ones that I need for different projects. So I have them by their color groups in there and so on. And the ones I don't reach for every time I'm sewing are up on the higher shelves. And I have a little stool that I can stand on and get up there and get those. In the basket up top are some other, basically maintenance equipment, sprays, my oils, things like that, that I don't reach for every day, so they're just up there on the top shelf. And in here is where I basically keep my thread. Now below you will see I do have one of those thread stands, and quite frankly I don't use it. I find it a pain in the butt. So what threads are sitting on there are threads that I got way back before I was really into quilting. Excuse me. And they just sit there because I put it there on the wall. So yeah. These boxes I use primarily Aurifil when I'm piecing, and so I have quite a bit of Aurifil, and I have the Aurifil boxes, and I have them all labeled as well so I know what's in them. You'll notice there's one there that says Sulky and King Tut. So different brands of thread. In the basket are some embroidery supplies that I use. And in this little corner, and this sits right next to my sewing machine, I have my 505 canned air. I have another little holder for specialty scissors, like my embroidery scissors and things like that. It is a tight little corner, but it's very convenient. Those white boxes have pre-wound bobbins in them that I buy in bulk from Monfil. And a little tray right down in here that holds, like a seam ripper and a few other go-to items that I'm reaching for when I'm sewing. So I'm going to come back around here. Of course, my sewing machine, you've seen these in some of my videos, sits right here. And underneath, well, first of all, let me explain this whole setup. I'll pull back a little bit. So you can see my cutting mat, my wool mat, and my sewing machine. And these are folding tables. And I have several of them. I think there's 1, 2, 3, there's 4 folding tables. Sorry, dust. That area on top of those folding tables, I put a piece of 3/4 inch plywood that I made into a gigantic pressing mat. There's a layer of, I'll just pull up and excuse the discoloration, but that's what happens. There's a piece of batting that's the same size as this big piece of plywood, and it goes all the way to the back and all the way down to the sewing machine. So it's a pretty large piece. And I put batting down, and then I put this light canvas-like material on top of it. And this can be used as a pressing mat. When I need it for a really large piece, I take my wool pressing mat, which is what I use almost all the time, and you can tell by the discoloration on it. I can take that off, and I can take this cutting mat off, and I have a wider area for ironing. I don't often have to do that, but it's nice to know that I can when I need to. Now, these folding tables got me more storage space because this goes back quite a ways. Goes back about 4 feet probably. And because I think each one of those tables is about 2 feet long. So in behind there is way back behind that basket and behind my collapsible machine bag, my sewing machine trolley or whatever you want to call it, is all my batting. Now, yes, it's a bit of a pain in the butt when I have to get out my batting because I have to pull out that basket of batting scraps that are there, and I have to pull out my sewing machine bag. But I have the batting in bags in behind there. I just grab them and pull them out. There's some other items that aren't related to sewing stored way back in there. Some of my equipment that I use for my art journaling classes when I used to give those. And so it's all out of sight, out of mind. Not the best system in the world, but batting, how do you store batting? Because batting takes up a lot of space. So it fits under there quite nicely. I also have some drawer units under here. This one with the 2 big drawers, that holds my large pieces of fabric. And I'll just pull it out so you can see. So lots of that. And in the bottom. And These smaller drawers right here just hold miscellaneous equipment like things I need for free motion quilting, my gloves and things like that. That one says rotary cutters. That doesn't hold rotary cutters anymore. That holds something else. What does it hold? Oh, it's just miscellaneous bric-a-brac. And the same with the one below. And they fit right very neatly under here. So that's what I use as my main pressing and cutting surface. Another folding table here that has a sewing machine on it, but below it is also storage. I have another set of drawers. These are things, again, that I don't reach for every day, but they hold miscellaneous items, and I have them somewhat labeled. I think those labels are a little out of date. I need to relabel that. I have some extra baskets that I get from the dollar store or wherever. I like to have baskets around because when I'm doing a project, I can put, especially an embroidery project, I will organize all the threads I need for a project in one of those baskets until I'm finished the project. There's also a few containers under here, and these are scraps. And I started to organize the scraps, as you'll see in a moment, but essentially that's where the bulk of my scraps lie. So over here by my sewing machine is my stool. The reason I have a stool is because this space is too small, because I have another table here with my other sewing machines on it, and I'll come to that in a minute. So this fits in there very nicely, and it does allow me to swing around, because sometimes I'm doing embroidery on this machine, I'll be sewing on this machine, and I can just swing around very conveniently in there. If I had a chair with a back on it, it wouldn't fit. It would be nice to have a chair with a back on it, but no. And actually, this stool I find very comfortable. Now, this set of shelves that are here that have what was supposed to be a design wall, but just never worked that way out, is a set of shelves that have been here for a long time as well. I cleaned off a lot of the stuff that's there, but in behind that wall of things hanging on it are all my paints and things that I used in my mixed media crafting days. Well, I still use them. And this just kind of hides it. And at the same time, was supposed to be a design wall, but it didn't work. It's too small for that. So basically, I just hang pieces on here that are miscellaneous experiments and things like that, maybe some instructions and notes and things, and that's where they sit. The shelves below have related binders and books about whatever. And you see these little white boxes here, and I think I did do a video some time ago when I was organizing my scraps. I had these boxes, and in these boxes, they're listed with what scraps there's in them on the side. Just let me pull one out. These originally had rubber stamps in them from my card making days. And I've altered them so that I have my scraps organized by colors in bags. You want to know something? I forget they're even there. I usually reach for fabric that's on in the blue baskets on the shelves that I just showed you. There's a little tray from the dollar store here with like things that I'll reach for, like my screwdriver and that for changing my needles, tape measure, odds and ends there. But there's also a little place for me to put my coffee cup as well. The stuff below that has nothing to do with quilting. It's just stuff. So I have another folding table in here that fits neatly into this spot, and this holds my first little travel sewing machine. And now, of course, I moved up to the Skyline S7, and that sits there. I have another wool pressing mat, it's a little bit smaller one, and it's sitting on another area that if I want, I can iron on that as well. And then I have some little bulletin boards that really, I have to rethink that idea because I really don't use those where they are. And of course, because this is a utility room, that's the power box that I'm sharing in this room too, but I've even used it with magnetic things to stick on it. I don't know if you should really do that or not, being it's your electrical box, but I do. So I have this shelf that sits here. Now this shelf originally was just for the modem, for the internet connection throughout the house, but I've utilized more space for putting my magazines and books that are related to quilting and sewing up here. I found one of these little shelves that are meant for your kitchen cabinets to give you more space. They hang on the edge. So I decided I needed the space. I put some baskets in there, and I keep some of my empty bobbin cases in there and different little things. There's a little mirror here. Has nothing to do with anything. It was just in another room at one time and I needed the space for something. So instead of just putting it away in the crawl space, I thought, it makes a nice decoration. I'll hang it on the wall. There's a whole lot of wires down here in behind. There's a travel iron there, my Rowenta. This is the iron that I will use when I'm using this pad here, when I want something really close to this sewing machine, when I'm using it. And all of this stuff, there's a phone as well. There's a USB port because I'll often plug my iPad in over here. I have a little stand for it, which allows me to use the app for watching when my embroidery is being stitched out. It gives me the countdown, how much time before the next color change and that kind of thing. So I'll often set that up here as well. So we proceed up a little further. I've had these shelves here quite a while. I don't know where I bought this rack, but I used to keep magazines and things like that I would read while I was on the treadmill. Well, got rid of those, and it now holds a clock. It holds an Alexa or an Echo Dot actually there as well, and the Madeira threads on large spools that I bought recently from Monfil just to try out. There's a clock on the wall. There's some hats, don't ask why, there as well. And my computer for this room. Now, I have a lot of computers in this house. In my craft room, I have 3, don't ask why. And I have this one here, and everything, of course, is networked through the whole house with everything else. It sits here on top of this Alexa unit. That little thing is not supposed to be hanging out. Pardon me while I straighten things up. Now, behind it, get ready, what a mess. I have this tower. I bought this on Amazon some time ago, and it has spots for outlets and spots for USBs. I saw it at a retreat that I went to. A lady brought it with her and set it up in the middle of her cluster of tables, and everybody could plug into it, and I thought that was a really brilliant idea. It was about $35 on Amazon, and I love it. I have my iron and sewing machines over here plugged into it. I can plug in my USB if I need to. I've got the computer plugged into it, etc. Now let me just open this computer up again. Well, one-handed I can't do very well. That all sits on my Alex unit, and these are where I keep my embroidery threads. And I have a lot of embroidery threads. I did build, though, into these. On my Cricut, I created these little things with holes. Let's get them in the shot here, you can see here, and they fit my threads. Now the theory is it keeps them well organized. I had to take some things off the side of these shelves so they would pull out the full way. Otherwise you lose about that much space and you can't reach in. So I get a lot of threads, and this whole cabinet is nothing but threads, and you can see it's labeled according to their numbers, and I try to keep them pretty much in those groupings. I don't always do it to the best way possible, but then sometimes I have to do a little bit of cleanup and reorganizing. So if we turn our attention, oh yes, one thing I forgot to say, that computer is hooked into that TV monitor that you saw at the other end of the room. So while I'm sewing, because I'm sitting here at the sewing machine, let me just sit down so you can see what I'm talking about. I can watch YouTube on here or watch regular TV. It's all networked through. When I have a Zoom sewing retreat or something like that, this is where I'll sit. I'll be working and I can see the Zoom and the other people working as well. So this is a favorite spot of mine right here. Okay, let's just spin around to this area. So this is where I've started to divide this room. There are 2 doors that lead into this room. That was a mistake on the builder's part when we first had the house built 25 years ago, but we left it because we thought, well, if you ever wanted to divide this room into, you know, a separate area, you'd have a door to go into each area. We never did, but then I sort of did by setting this unit up. I used to have a collapsible table over here as well, but it just wasn't doing it for me. There just wasn't enough space. So I went online, I looked at what IKEA had available, and I bought one of their tabletops and 4 of their Alex drawer units. In fact, I probably could buy another one, and I'm thinking about doing that because I could get another one under there as well. Can you have too much storage space? No. So you will notice that I have all of these drawers labeled. I'll just go down here so you can see. So, you know, projects, large pieces of fabric, embroidery threads, more embroidery threads over here, serger threads, backing fabric, miscellaneous, Christmas fabric. All of them are in these drawers. And they're all labeled so I can find these things. But I have them all full. So I had these little shelves with the blue labels on them in my crawl space. I'd used them for something else a long time ago, forgot I had them, never threw them out, got them out and set up this system. And again, everything is labeled because it's the only way I'm going to be able to find things. So bag hardware, serger pieces, tools, rotary cutters. I have a lot of rotary cutters. Stabilizer down in that particular drawer. Well, about a week and a half ago, I ordered these 6 white cubes from Amazon. They were a pretty good price. They're about $35 for the 6. And they are fairly deep shelves. Let me get up off my knees. Oh, easier said than done. And I just had an old shelf laying around, and I put that on top, and I built these up from there. And so they house a lot of my fat quarters. I love fat quarters. I collect fat quarters. Too many fat quarters, but they're so pretty. And some English paper piecing, and I have, now that's a temporary drawer. This one's the steampunk threads because there is a embroidery design set that I have that I'm still playing around with, and these are the colors that I was using with it. And that's what I often do is, as I told you, I have those plastic boxes. I will pull those out when I'm working on an embroidery project, pull out all the threads I need for that particular project, and that will be their home. As you can see, here's a little basket here for a small project, and that's where they stay until I'm finished with that project, and then I put them back in the big drawer set. I do have space that I use on top of this, and you can tell I love baskets, right? And that's a little messy, so let's just tuck that away. So, embroidery patterns. They're all in that big basket. You saw this big basket below. This is where I put all my patterns. And I have a lot of patterns. I collect patterns. A lot of them I get for free from the internet, but I have them all in these plastic bags. I went on Amazon and ordered 200 of these bags. They're the right size for patterns. And I have them organized according to block patterns, ones I've completed, etc., ones I want to do. And that's their home in there. The space up on top here right now is temporary space unless I buy another bunch of these drawers and I go even higher. I think that's as high as I want to go. I have a bar up here at the top. Originally, that black bar, and you can see there's a blue curtain on that end, and there's a blue curtain on this end. Originally, when I started doing idiot quilter videos, my idea was I got this rod, I put these curtains on it, and I could pull them across so you wouldn't be able to see Walter's workshop in behind. Well, I decided I don't use it, so that's where it sits. However, I am using the curtain rod, which is a very strong rod, as you can see. It's very thick. And this is where I hang UFOs. Those are all UFOs, meaning they all need to be layered and then quilted. And on the other end, I hang some of my bags that I have created. And some of those dime doors are up there. And right now I have a wire coat hanger bent out in a sort of a round shape. I take scraps of fabric, little strips of them that I can't really use for anything else, and I tie them. Just knot them onto that. And eventually that will become a sort of a wreath. At least that's my theory. We'll see how that works out. So, you know, it's just a way to use your scraps up. Now, I've been constantly reformatting this area to make space. Like I just added those drawers, and I have these shelf racks. They're meant to go into your pantry or area where you keep your canned goods and give you a little extra space on a shelf. And I just bought them at the dollar store. Dollar store is a great place for finding storage items, which I'm sure everybody knows. And I just have them sitting here together, and they act as a secondary shelf. And below that, I have a couple of blue baskets. They're empty right now. Again, they're temporary storage for things that I might be working on or whatever. I can just slide them out here, pop the stuff in, and put it away. I don't like a lot of stuff sitting out all over a counter. And speaking of the counterpart, you can see I have another cutting mat here. So this is another area where I can do smaller cutting if I need to. Of course, lighting isn't the best in here. I only have one overhead, well actually I have two fluorescent lights overhead. So I put in this little light here as well. Now, I have, you probably noticed it when I was looking over in this area, I have a big power bar in here. I actually have two, because the treadmill's plugged into that, my computer's plugged into it, a lot of stuff is plugged into all of that. And I have an extension cord running all the way in behind right here. And you might wonder what that big monstrosity is there. That's a table saw. Yeah, Walter hasn't used that table saw in years. I keep hoping that he will take it out of this room at some point in time. But where we're going to put it, I don't know. He doesn't want to get rid of it. It could go in our garage, except, well, our garage doesn't have a lot of space either. We're not hoarders, I don't think. Just have a lot of junk that we really need to get rid of. Okay, back to the tour. So as I said, I have this cutting mat here, and I basically use this table setup for setting out projects or things like that. I also use it as my table for my serger. And the extension cord that runs behind there is actually plugged into a power bar that I have mounted here underneath. And so the serger's plugged into that, and so is that light that I just turned on over there. And I have a few more outlets if I need them for whatever. If I need it to iron over here, I could put my wool mat, one of them down, and iron on that surface. And I even have, there's the little stool, there's a weight, don't ask why, my running shoes for getting on the treadmill in the morning, and that pretty much takes us full circle. Oh yes, one more thing in the rafters. I have this clothesline of sorts up here where I can temporarily hang things. Sometimes I hang, excuse me, I'll hang the quilts that are in the background when I'm showing them to you on an Idiot Quilter, although recently I acquired this more substantial hanging system that screws right into the rafters, that wire, and that works a little better because it doesn't really sag as much as this one does. Yeah, so that is a little tour of my room, and let me just flip my camera around. There I am. So I thought I would share that with you. I know that a lot of people put up sewing room, their sewing rooms, and take you on a tour, and they're beautiful, absolutely beautiful. And someday I'm going to have a room like that too, but I don't know when that's going to be. And for now, this is my area. Oh yes, and I do have a carpet on the floor. You may have seen it in some of the shots when I was down on my knees looking underneath my tables. So it's a cozy spot. It works for me. I'm constantly readjusting it. You know, as you work in an area, you realize what works for you and what doesn't work for you, and so you have to readjust. But I've got an awful lot of stuff in a very small space, so I thought I would show you the reality of it, because I know many people use their dining room table. They use a small bedroom as their sewing room. A lot of people do not have the luxury that some people do to have a huge room that they can put everything in and, you know, make it look like a, well, like a store front. So I hope you enjoyed this little video, and stay tuned for future episodes of the Idiot Quilter.